Hey gang, Dr. Foster here, the success coach with MaximumChange.com. Want to talk to you about effective leadership. In order to talk about effective leadership, though, I'm going to have to give you some context. First and foremost, I get a lot of my information from the textbook that I wrote in, let's see, this is 2016 is the last update. It's a second edition, The Open Organization, and it's a new era of leadership and organizational development. This was my doctoral thesis and has been published and read and taught at different universities. And this is the new era of leadership. You can find this on Amazon.com under my name, Dr. Foster, and the Open Organization. You might want to check it out. But I want to talk to you about effective leadership. In order to do that, I have to give you context of leadership. Now, leadership has two formats. There's the traditional leadership, and then there is the 21st century leader. And so I want to define those, but before I can define those two, I want to talk to you just about the very basics of what leadership really is. Leadership is about influencing others to a common cause. Where there's followers, there's leaders, and where there's leaders, there's followers typically. But a leader is all about the influence of others to a common cause or a focus or a goal. So there has to be some sort of end game to leadership. Now, the traditional leader is all about formal lines of authority. Power is vested in the person or the position, not in the process. And so when we think about traditional leadership, we're usually talking about 19th and 20th century ideas of leadership, and we can go as far back as maybe 17th, 18th century ideas in some cases and causes. But I want to focus mostly on 19th and 20th century ideas of leadership when I'm talking and focused in on traditional leadership. Because when we think about it, the way that we teach business typically in business schools and the way that leaders lead organizations are tied up in this concept of hierarchy. Top down, very structured, very rigid. There's a whole bunch of layers in there. And so that is typically traditional leadership. The unfortunate thing is that we're in the 21st century now. And a lot of times, things that worked really well at a given time don't work well in a current time. And the reason for that is that society changes, cultural habits and norms change, technology changes, the needs of people and the marketplace change. And so we have to look at the whole context of what we're dealing with. And right now, we're dealing with a time frame where we can no longer rely on traditional leadership to be effective in a 21st century context. And I won't be able to talk about all the nuances of that today and in this video, but hopefully over time as I present more information on this, I can give you a better context of why we have to change with the times. And given the 21st century approach, we have to make some changes. Now, a 21st century leader is focused on several different areas. For one, and we're going to get into each one of these, empowerment is one area. And to be an effective leader in the context of a 21st century situation, we have to understand empowerment of the employees. And in that empowerment, it's wrapped up in this idea of trust of the followers. We're also going to touch on the idea of a leader as a catalyst. And then we want to touch on two items that are kind of cousins, related closely together: transparency and accountability. Now, these are some of the areas that I will focus in on for effective leadership skills. They're not the end all, they're not the all means of effective leadership, because there's so many other nuances and we won't be able to get into that in a very short video. But let's go ahead and talk about empowering employees. Now, this is a huge 21st century idea. And the reason why I think it's a big deal for the 21st century and the way we lead people is because I believe that the more technology expands and video and audio become more dominant in the workspace, I think that empowerment is going to become key, because we have so many employees that are dispersed. When I talk about dispersed, from the 1980s and 1990s, we used to call this telecommuting. So we have employees or workers, human capital, if you want to call them that, spread out all around the globe. And I would dare say that one day human capital could very well be spread out amongst the solar system, because we're right now, at the time that I'm recording this, is 2019. We are talking about in the next 5 to 10 years populating Mars. And so that means that we are heading into populating the moon and Mars and space stations. And so the context of a dispersed workforce can evolve over time. And I'm willing to even hypothesize that you will have workers that are one day not even stationed here on planet Earth. But let's talk about what this means in the broader context of leadership in the way of empowering employees. You see, when we empower employees, what we're doing is we're providing our followers, providing our human capital with meaningful, self-fulfilling jobs, and we're also being responsive to their needs. Now, what that means is if an employee, my human capital, my employee comes to me and they have an issue where they have a sick child, me being responsive to their needs as a 21st century leader is allowing them to work from home, telecommute, whatever you want to call it. They're using video, they're using audio, they're using connections to the internet to get their work done. They're using collaborative software and techniques. So, things like Google Docs and Google Sheets and all these different programs all come together to help the employee still do their job, but the leader helps them by being responsive to their needs. They need to stay home with a sick child, let's say. Or maybe you have an employee that is really good at what they do and you would hate to lose them. It would cost you a lot of money to train someone to do what they do, but that employee wants to live in another country or travel, and you're able to allow them to travel and do their things as long as they're able to keep up with their work. So you allow them to telecommute or disperse out into the world and do their work. Empowerment is about all of those things. And in fact, empowerment is about acknowledging the employee's skills, their abilities, and then trusting them to get their work done in the way, methodology, pattern, whatever it is that they feel best to get the work done. It's no longer about micromanagement. And we have to understand that management is different than leadership. Management is more about microcontrol, where leadership is more about empowerment, in my mind. Leadership is about influence, where management is about control. Now, you might argue with me on that, and you might offer other perspectives, and I get that. I'm not here to split hairs on this. I'm just trying to give you a 100,000-foot level on the differences. So empowerment, again, is about acknowledging those skills and abilities and then trusting the human capital to do what is necessary to get the work done. That means that if the employee comes to you and say, hey, I've got a sick child, I need to work from home today, that you trust them that they're going to get that work done. And also leadership, because it's an influence-driven position, it's about, when we talk about empowerment, it's about helping those followers believe in themselves, believe in their own abilities, believe in their own skills, and helping them to see that you trust them. So empowerment is more than just telling them, hey, you can go do this. It's about helping them create a mindset and a level of self-belief that they probably did not have before, or even if they had it, it's about elevating that belief. Look at empowering leaders as the captain of a football team. A good captain of a football team is about leading the charge, but also encouraging, cheerleading, pressing on. And so imagine, that captain is the leader. And the leader is saying, you can do this, go do this, here are the tools. And by the way, empowerment is about giving the employees the tools that they need and then getting out of their way, not micromanaging their decisions. Now, I just want to be clear about something. When I talk about empowerment, I'm not talking about abdication of leadership role. In fact, I would say that this is actually a more powerful form of leadership when you empower someone, because let's face it, you're only one person. You can't be everywhere all the time. You can't be all things to all people. And so why not tap into the collective knowledge, the collective brain, the collective skills of the organization? There truly are people in your organization that do things better than you or more efficiently than you can do. For example, I'm a small business owner. I have clients all around the world, but I am not necessarily the best marketing person there is. So I engage with people that are better skilled at that. That doesn't mean that I don't need to know how to do that, or at least have a broad understanding of what's going on there. But the issue here is that I recognize that that's not my skill set. And so I empower someone who has that skill set to go forth and make that happen for me. So this is all about trusting your followers, trusting your employees, making sure that they know that you believe in them, that you respect them, and you give them the tools that they need, and you don't overwhelm them with constant change and constant chaos, that you allow them to do what they know to do and to do it the best way they know how. That doesn't mean that you don't ask how things are going. That doesn't mean that you don't intervene and get feedback. No, what that means is that you allow them to do their work. I can't tell you how many times in my past, I've been in the business world 25 years, 19 of which I've been an entrepreneur, 15 of which, excuse me, I've been a coach and consultant. And I can tell you countless times how I personally have experienced it and how I've seen organizations do this to other employees, where they ask an employee to do something, they empower them to do it, and then they immediately take it away. That is the worst format for leadership. In fact, it goes back to the traditional lines of leadership and lack of trust and accountability and transparency, which we're going to talk about here in a moment. Now, one other thing I want to mention to you is that a leader should be what I call a catalyst. Now, this is about getting things going. Catalyst is about starting. When we look at a automobile engine, gasoline and a spark from a spark plug, that's a catalyst that causes the engine to move into motion and propels the vehicle in a direction, forward or back or whatever. So in the context of leadership, we should have the mindset that a leader should be a catalyst. So a leader should get things going, and then they should get out of the way or cede control to the members. And the best way to do this, and I won't have time to get deep into this conversation today, but the best way to do this is to have an organizational governance. Now, governance, quite simply put, are the rules and regulations that everyone abides by to affect change and to create momentum and to meet the needs of the common cause of the organization. It's the rules by which we engage to get things done. So if I give you a list of rules, these are the things you're allowed to do, these are the things you're not allowed to do, and I get out of your way, I'm trusting you that you're going to follow the organizational governance. My role as a catalyst is to get it going and then to hand it to you to do it. That does not mean that I've abdicated my role as a leader. In fact, I do still hold the authority to come in and to say to you, I'm going to override your decision. Now, I just want to caution you here on overriding decisions. If you do it too much, too often, too soon, you're going to start creating a culture of distrust in this empowerment. In fact, if you give me authority to do something and then you go behind my back and you do something different, or you make a decision without consulting me, then the next time that it comes up where you've given me authority to do something, I'm just going to wait for you to make a decision so that you can get it done. Now, again, this defeats the whole purpose of empowering people if you're going to do all the work. You can't be everywhere, every time, all things to all people. You just can't do it. You're one person. It is much more effective to trust. Now, if you can't trust them, my question to you is this: why can't you trust them? I want you to think really hard about why you cannot trust an employee. Now, it may be that you have the wrong person in the role, and that can happen. You've hired the wrong person, or the role has moved beyond their skill set. Now, whose fault is that you allowed that to happen? Of course, it's you. You as the leader. The buck stops at you. If you do not help your employees grow in skill set and mindset and training, then it's your fault that the position moved beyond them. Now, there's some cases where the position catapults beyond that person and it's nobody's fault because the organization is just growing too fast. Now, the question is, can we move that employee somewhere else in the organization, or do we have to let them go? The most humane thing to do is to not allow someone to sit in that position for years on end, struggling, and you're not proactive about it. So a leader is a catalyst in that they get things going and then they move out of the way and let people get their job done. Again, it does not abdicate your role as a leader. You can step in, but you better have a very good reason for intervening in a decision, and you better be able to explain it in such a way that it does not derail the empowerment process within the organization. Now, transparency. Let's talk about this real quick. Transparency is where we take, or rather bring, information to everyone. In other words, we provide clearly everything, or just about everything, that everyone needs to know in the organization, and we allow for everyone to embrace the realities of a given circumstance. Transparency builds a strong level of trust when it's done right. So let's talk about transparency real quick. When we give information to everyone, that means that we don't hide things. Some organizations believe that you should be able to provide everything from salary information of everyone in the organization to who we're hiring and so forth. The problem with transparency is that sometimes there's a need to know basis for transparency. And you have to upfront tell your organization that we're going to share with you 95%, 98% of everything that needs to be known. But there's going to be certain things that are not shareable. Now, one of those things is if an organization is getting ready to do an IPO and they're getting ready to go public, you cannot, for regulation purposes, you cannot share all that information with everyone, because then it becomes insider trading, and that's a no-no. So there's certain contexts where you cannot share everything. There's certain human resource things that you probably can't or won't share with the organization, and so we need to make sure that you have the appropriate level of privacy for those things as well. So transparency is about sharing almost everything that's needed for someone to do their job. So if I need a certain information, let's say information A, and you don't give me access to that, I cannot effectively do my job. However, if there's information B, C, and D, that would be interesting to know, but I don't really need it to do my job. It's not as mission critical, okay? Now, let's talk about accountability real quick. Now, accountability is where it helps to regulate or even constrain behaviors so that things will work properly. So there's certain types of accountability. There is the common accountability, which is your boss asks you what you're doing, and you report to your boss, and you need to explain to them why you did what you did and how you did it. And then there is this accountability where it's like peer pressure. In other words, that the accountability is held within the unit or the team, and you have this peer pressure to get things done and get things done appropriately. So accountability is measured against the organization's governance. I've mentioned the governance earlier, and accountability allows discussions, sometimes difficult ones even, to occur that will transform the organization. So accountability might be that an employee comes to you and they ask you a question that impacts their decision-making process, and it's a very difficult one to answer. Like, why was John let go from his position? Now, obviously there's some need to know in that possibly, but there's also this level of accountability. Do I need to be worried about my job? Type of things happen and are discussed. So accountability is about a measuring or balancing rod that helps us to constrain behaviors or to regulate. Accountability also allows for the transparency. Remember, I said they're related. And so accountability is about my ability to say to you, why did you do that? And does that meet the measure of our company governance, or organizational governance? And see, that's where accountability is truly balanced against what we said the rules and regulations and guidelines are for the organization. So if you want to be an effective leader, you need to look at leadership from the context of a 21st century organization, and that when we talk about a 21st century leader, we're really focused on things like empowerment, which includes trust. We look at the leader being a catalyst. In other words, they help get things going and then they get out of the way. We look at a 21st leader being effective in the areas of creating transparency and accountability. And by the way, accountability is also this idea that I don't say to you, do what I say, not what I do. No, when I am held accountable, I am also accountable to the rules, the regulations, the governance that the organization has set forth. And so typically that governance, which I'm not going to be able to talk about fully here today, typically that governance is something that's been designed by the entire organization. Everyone has a say in it, which is the empowerment side. Everyone gets a say in it, which creates transparency and accountability. So that is a 100,000-foot level of effective leadership in the context of a 21st century approach to leading an organization. I'm Dr. Foster. I am the success coach with MaximumChange.com. If this resonates with you and you need help with this or other areas of leadership or business development or executive development, I'd love to coach, mentor you, or even consult with your organization. Just go to my website at MaximumChange.com, and under our services tab, there's different areas and levels of engagement that you can get involved with there. So I'd love to hear from you. I'd love for you to comment on this video. I hope to hear from you soon, and I hope you have a great day. See you soon.